Hello, everyone. It is 2 o'clock. Well, my clock says 13:59. I try to get here straight up. I'm going to move you to my table so that I don't jiggle. I notice when I'm on Zoom calls with clients that I'm just constantly moving and you get a lot of this stuff. And so I'm going to move you to my table so that you don't get sick and feel like you got to throw up. Uh, got this table for this reason, and I'm going to try not to kick it. Okay. How is everybody today? We've got Joshua here. You could watch all his new epic videos. So over the weekend, I went to Mount Charleston. You're going to start seeing a bunch of videos. I'm kind of getting into this. I've gotten feedback. People say, "Well, you should write a book," and I will write a book or two or six at some point as things slow down. I've just been really busy, good busy. I'm really enjoying everything that I'm doing. Our veterans program is growing by leaps and bounds. We're adding clinicians. We started in January of 2024, and I'm thinking we've had over 300, 400 veterans, that we're helping. We're helping a homeless community here, unhoused community here in Las Vegas. We go one weekend a month to the care complex downtown and provide clinicians for homeless people and offer resources for them. Certainly here, the clinic is growing by leaps and bounds. My business, and again, they're all my businesses, but you understand that I have the clinic, which is a low income clinic where we serve everybody really here in Las Vegas. And then I have my company that teaches HUNA and does corporate training and consulting, private practice psychotherapy, hypnotherapy, NLP, called Integral Life Systems. And then I have a HUNA Halal, which is called Maikeaulani Ika Hunua. I will not ask you to repeat that back to me. So lots of irons in the fire. It is my birthday this weekend. I will be, as I said, and don't do the math. I said to the group here, because I work with my clinicians, this is like the 32nd anniversary of my 25th birthday or something. I'm 66 on Sunday, feeling really good. By the way, loving everything I'm doing. Went up to Mount Charleston over the weekend. Last weekend, I recorded 73 videos. Joshua says the new video releases every Monday and Wednesday on Facebook and Instagram. So if you like them, they're short. I mean, some of them are longer than others, but they're a minute to 5 minutes long on various topics and questions that I get, because I do get a lot of questions. Some of you know me from Quora, which is a kind of an online information place. Some of you know me from Psychology Today. Some of you know me from TV, from CNN, from local news channels here. And some of you know me from HUNA and, all that sort of thing. So the intention behind this YouTube channel, and we're building, is so that as I just think that there needs to be a compendium of information about mental health. And my specialty, as you know, is the intersection of science and spirituality, and that what I see as really coming together of science and spirituality. And that's what I teach, and that's what I do. And I integrate many different kinds of modalities, not only as a teacher, but as a therapist and a kumu of Huna, which is a teacher of Hawaiian shamanistic studies. Today, I want to talk about grief and loss for a particularly specific reason. Joshua says, I hope you have an amazing 37th anniversary of my 29th birthday. I think that's the accurate math. 37th anniversary of my 29th birthday. There you go. There it is. That's the math. I think that's the real math. Leave it to Joshua to come up, and I keep kicking you. I can't help it. I think the table's here and I'm going to move around. And so at least I'm able to gesture and all that sort of thing. So as you know, if you have watched the news, there was another school shooting. Amber says that she's 8 years Monday. I don't know if Amber means that she's 8 years old, which I've met Amber and she looks great for 8. So we'll see what she means by 8 years Monday. Will you, I think this is an appropriate time to talk about grief and loss and to talk about how you navigate, or how you are navigating. It came up in group supervision that many of us shared some of our grief and loss, and that as we work with clients, and this YouTube is not meant for therapists. This is meant for garden variety people struggling with what we struggle with. The Buddhists came up with the Four Noble Truths. This was Shakyamuni Buddha 2,500 years ago. He says, life for all humans, all sentient beings, know birth, old age, sickness, and death. And those are universals, and I love to, and I have people on my caseload that are billionaires. I work with the gamut of the human experience. I work from birth to death, and I work from homeless, mentally ill veterans to billionaires. And I have one now. And so, well, I have all of that going on now. And I'm in a great position to tell you, lest you think you're the only one, or lest you think that, the thing that, oh, gee, it must be nice to be so rich. Humans have common themes in their existence. And I will tell you that some of the most enlightened people that I have met have been homeless. Uh, uh, in that they choose. And I worked, remember, for 10 years in an LA County level 1 trauma center where I dealt with homeless people every day. And my job as the social worker was to get them housing, or to at least get them out of the ER. But then I would work with them to get them into a shelter or a sober station, or into detox or something like that. And I'm telling you that and this is, you understand that I'm not a political figure, and I don't speak from a political point of view. I know that a lot of what's going on in the world right now is highly politicized. And please understand, and please forgive me, I don't come from that point of view. I speak from a very humanistic point of view, a very spiritual point of view, and I try to offer you a viewpoint of life and being human that is separate and distinct from whatever's going on in the government, or in world politics, or the economy, that kind of thing. So when I speak about all this stuff today, and we're going to talk about the shooting that happened in Minneapolis. Now, I will tell you the shooting in Minneapolis, and I'm going to read something to you from a congresswoman, my congresswoman, occurred, I want to be accurate here, a few blocks from where I live, from my home. I live at 66th Street, or on near 64th Street, really. This happened at about 57th Street, and I could look up the Catholic Church where it happened. So very close to home. Now, some of you have heard me talk about the George Floyd shooting occurring where I went to school, where I went to college, and that in the view of the shooting, not the shooting for George Floyd, but when the police officer had his knee on the neck of George Floyd, I could see the building I lived in college. You recall a few months ago, we had a shooting of politicians in New Brighton, Minnesota, which is where the person I was dating lived, and I had been to New Brighton many, many times. Where's my sister? My sister actually, or Brooklyn Park, I'm sorry, not New Brighton, Brooklyn Park, where my sister, very close to where my sister lived. And so while this is close to home for me, this particular shooting, the level of violence, and whether you're talking about the wars now, or the economies, and what the United States, is experiencing in terms of things, what China's doing, what Russia's doing, just the global political stuff. I'm not concerned about it from a political point of view. I'm concerned about how do we navigate as humans, because this kind of thing happens. And so I'm going to read to you a letter I just got just this moment. This is from Congresswoman Kelly Morrison, checking in our community. Dear Patrick, this week we experienced an unthinkable tragedy. My heart is with everyone in our community as we all process and grieve the horrific event at Annunciation Catholic School. I am devastated by the loss of life of 2 innocent children who were taken from us all too soon, praying for the recovery of all those who were injured, and heartbroken by the trauma that everyone involved had to experience in this nightmare event. I'm so grateful for our state, local, and federal law enforcement who were immediately on the scene and who continue to work tirelessly on the investigation and make sure our communities are safe. I'm also immensely grateful to our emergency workers, hospital staff, paramedics, doctors, and nurses who cared for the victims in the face of this incredibly traumatic event. They are heroes. Now should be a time filled with joy, hope, laughter, and learning as our children head back to their first days of school, but instead, we are a community reeling from yet another senseless act of gun violence. As a doctor and a mother and an American, I'm horrified that gun violence is the #1 killer of children in our country. It's completely unacceptable. Our children deserve better. Our children deserve action. Our children deserve safety. No one policy will end this public health crisis, but there are steps we can take immediately to protect our children and that includes getting weapons of war off our streets. It's common sense, and it's the least we can do to stop these horrific tragedies and build safer country where our children can be healthy and thrive. We need to ban assault weapons and the high capacity magazines and pass federal legislation to curb this epidemic. As Congress heads back into session, please know that I will be doing everything I can to push action for gun violence prevention. I'll be talking and taking your voices with me. Please continue to speak out for change, and we continue to show up for one another. It's what we do best here in Minnesota. And this is Minnesota's 3rd district, by the way. It's how we will get through these dark times together with a heavy heart. Kelly Morrison, member of Congress. Now, I realize that I just told you that I'm not going to make this political, and I'm not. I think that she very eloquently, Dr. Morrison, really, these are complex problems. And whether you talk about gun violence or homelessness or economic hardship or addiction or mental health issues or anything that humans are faced with, and whether you look at, I don't know about you, but I do spend a lot of time on YouTube. I was just noticing that I do love YouTube, and I think it's a great place for us to share ideas. And I watch more than I talk. I do this once a week, but man, I'm on YouTube almost every day watching various videos. And what I'm noticing is, and I've said this before, I don't know what to believe anymore. Truly, I don't know what to believe on the news. I don't know what to believe on the radio. I don't know what to believe. I don't know how much is sensational, how much is political, how much is driven by other things. And, you know, Amber says, why churches and children? I'm with you. I don't understand. I did say in a video, I think it was a video that I recorded over the weekend, that evil exists in the world. And I'm not going to generalize. And I will say that I watched a video, a guy who was on, Sean Ryan, who was a vet, and he interviewed a former Delta Force. And he said that there's only 2 places in the world where he feels like he experienced true evil. One was Gettysburg. He went to the battlefield at Gettysburg, which was a Civil War battlefield, and he said he felt, a presence. And this is a Delta Force veteran, meaning he was a very highly trained, highly skilled marksman and soldier. And he's talking about his feelings now. He said when he went on the grounds of Gettysburg, he said every hair on my body just lit up. And he said, and I had that feeling in Iraq when he was in Iraq as a service person. And so make no mistake, whether we like it or not, evil exists, and that there are people out there. Now, I don't know really what I'm going to talk about today, lest I get sidetracked, is I want to talk about the implications for grief recovery as it relates to just human evolution. We're going to talk about some models today about grief and about death and dying, and models you've heard of, but I want to put them in a different context for you today. And the question came up in group supervision. I'm gesturing over to the group room where we just had about 30 of our clinicians in for group supervision. And it was my birthday, and they brought cakes and candles, and I got a beautiful card, and it was lovely. It's just lovely. The card. Ooh, I have to find the card. I don't know what I did with it, but I didn't throw it away. I'm looking. Everybody signed it. Beautiful. The question came up, is all trauma work grief and loss? Is all human challenges to do with grief and loss? And it kind of stopped me in my tracks, because if I think about it, if the Buddhists say that all humans go through birth, old age, sickness, and death, and those are the 4 noble truths, and those are the things that are not, I was going to say unique to humans, but they're the things they're the great equalizer. Children are the great equalizer. Pets are the great equalizer. Health concerns are the great equalizer. But if you go back to those 4 notable truths from Buddhism, all of us are born, all of us get older. It's kind of fun. I'm 66 on Sunday. And although I'm doing great, I can commiserate with my similar age cronies, and we can kind of laugh about the degeneration of the body and about the aches and the pains and all that kind of stuff. And you see a bunch of old people, old men or women around you, you go to a nursing home or whatever. It's the common denominator, and nobody can escape it. And it doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter where you are. Aging is a fact of life, and we all go through it. Now, aging has its own set of losses, if you think about it, right? Uh, that's old age. Sickness has its own set of losses. By virtue of my cancer treatment, I lost my thyroid. My thyroid doesn't function. I have to take a supplement for that. There were other, structural changes in my body. I had 8 surgeries. I had a head injury. I had, on and on and on. And so, as we talk today, I want you to reflect on your life. And the question on the table really is most of our stuff loss? Really, if you think about depression and anxiety and just what we deal with as humans, and I'm not talking about mentally ill, I'm just talking about all humans. It is, if you look at like issues of abandonment, I mean, again, in our case conferencing meeting every week, we had about 30 folks there today. Um, they bring up their cases, and it's 16-year-old female who was abandoned by her family, you know, uh, you know, 31-year-old male who children won't speak to them, and so on. And so I want to talk today and over this overarching umbrella of grief and loss, but that really what humans have to go through in terms of birth and old age and sickness and death is consistent, and that we're all in this together, and that we can all feel for each other. And whether you're in Ukraine or you're in Israel or Gaza Strip or you're in Russia, China, or whatever, I've been watching a lot about North Korea. I watch a lot about Russia. I watch a lot about China. And again, if you pay attention, you will see videos touting the amazing infrastructure of China and how wonderful it is. I follow travel bloggers because I love traveling, and I've been to China. I spent several months in China in my youth, and I love it. And I follow certain travel people, and they go to hotels I want to look at, and they fly on certain planes I want to fly in, and it's a very lovely, lovely experience. And then you see the other bloggers about China that say that the people are poor and that they're really struggling, the economy is this and that and the other thing. Now, I've said this to you before. I believe that given the nature of the internet, and now with AI, you can find anything to support any point of view. And that's why, on the one hand, there's a concern that we are dumbing down because of the availability of information, that we're just not critically thinking anymore. That children aren't critically thinking and teenagers aren't critically thinking, that they just kind of this passive recipient of information. And it's fun. And I'm joking, and you're gonna just have to get over it. There is a new movie out. It's called K-pop Demon Hunters, and it has a soundtrack, and I think 7 of the 9 songs are in the top 10 on Spotify right now. And if you have a teenager, if you have a teenage girl in particular that follows K-pop, she is gonna know K-pop Demon Hunters. And so parents out there, learn your K-pop Demon Hunters. And there is a song called Golden, and it's running in my head because it's everywhere I go. And I work with teenage girls, and the only way I build rapport with them is they come in and they say, have you seen deep K-pop Demon Hunters? I haven't seen it. Shh, don't tell them I haven't seen it, but I have been looking at little snippets, and I have been listening to the soundtrack, and it's really catchy. It's really good stuff. And did you know that V from BTS, the K-pop boy band, threw out the first pitch at the Dodger game the other day? And so that's another thing I have to know. So I know that V, whose name is Taeyong, went to Los Angeles and threw out the first pitch at Dodger Stadium and met Shohei Ohtani. And I work with teenage boys, and I work with young boys who are rabid about baseball. So this is my best attempt. And so I do have a weird, paying attention. But if you look at the internet, you can find anything to support anything. And so you must be careful, I think, in what you consume from a number of point of views. So today we're going to go through grief and loss. We're going to go through the stages of dying. I've been through them before, but we're going to put it all together up against. I want you to reflect on what you've lost. And today in group supervision, it was pretty poignant. We had a number of clinicians who disclosed deeply about their losses. And I don't know why. I was not the facilitator. One of our licensed people was the supervisor, and she was facilitating. And she opened up as today I want to talk about grief and loss. Who is willing to share some grief and loss. And the first person, started and said, "This is very heavy. I don't want this to be heavy. It's Dr. Scott's birthday. Can we just keep it light?" And we went there. It was kind of heavy, and that she had a dream about her father being shot, and about that she was shot. And then next person talked about that a friend committed suicide, and there's been two or three different losses. And then another person commented, and everybody in the room seemed to relate to this idea of grief and loss, and that loss happens to us. And whether it's the loss of a job, or the loss of economic standing, or the loss of health, the loss of sexual potency. And I work with a lot of men my age, who are grieving the loss of, sorry, erections. Women who are grieving the loss of sexual interest, right? And I'll be just really transparent. I had 8 surgeries on my parts. I had bladder cancer. I had prostate cancer. So, I had a hip replacement also, and I had a head injury. But many of those surgeries have to do with my parts, which is way more information that you want. But heck, it's my birthday. And I have had a profound change in functioning that I've had to negotiate. And that's a loss. And so today, and I don't want this to be heavy, I want it to be supportive and uplifting, but I also don't want to blow past this shooting. Um, I am conscious that we can tend to think that these things don't happen in our backyard. And I'm thinking of 3 horrendous deaths that happened in my backyard, in my hometown. This one, blocks from my home. Blocks. I mean, 3, 4 blocks from my home in Minnesota, in Minneapolis. Ironically, I don't worry about my safety, my personal safety, but we tend to look out there to the Ukraine, or to Russia or China or anywhere, and go, "Oh, those poor people," or "those poor third world countries," and "Oh, those poor people with all the violence." Well, I hate to break it to you. The fires in Los Angeles, the homes decimated, right? The Lahaina, Maui fire, right? A couple of years ago, just decimated that island. We have wildfires. We have earthquakes, fires, and floods, and riots, and looting, and on and on and on. And so, and I don't say this to say that the United States. This is, I think, the thing I want to say. I know that there are beautiful aspects to China. I've been there. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. I know that when you put 1 billion people together, there's probably going to be some problems, right? India, I've not been to India, and I've heard my business partner, Colleen, has gone to India several times, and she says it is at once the most beautiful and the most not beautiful place in the world. I believe the United States, and I see a lot of people who come to the United States for the first time. And I do like watching those videos, and I love hearing about people's perceptions of the United States when they come from Russia, or they come from North Korea. I'm really particularly interested in North Korea, and kind of what that's like. When I was in the People's Republic of China, it was pretty backward. It was 1980, and I was a college student, and it was very much of a communist regime, with the uniforms and everybody dressed the same, and not a lot of technology. We didn't have a lot of technology in 1980 either. It is now kind of the world's role model for infrastructure, the trains, the high-speed trains, and the buildings. And my God, if you look at some of the bigger cities in China, Shanghai and Guangzhou and Chongqing and others, they're visually just so. But then you also look at Singapore, you look at Macau, you look at Hong Kong, you look at some of those other Asian cities. They're just absolutely, magnificent. You look at the Middle East, look at Dubai, look at, and what's fun for me as a world traveler is I always look at, travel stuff, because I love traveling. I love traveling internationally. I fly a lot, and I get frequent flyer miles. Delta is my official carrier, and I can transfer miles into international carriers. And in the top 10 global airlines, not one of them is in the United States. It's Singapore Airlines, it's Emirates Airlines, it's different Middle Eastern, and Qantas and other international airlines are in the top 10. The United States isn't even, and this isn't a slam on the U.S., but it is as the world has evolved, we aren't the only game in town. anymore, and I know that Americans are down in America, other countries are down in America. People love the administration, they hate the administration, not the purpose of the video. But I think that if you look anywhere, you can find beauty and you can find ugly, in any country. And that not all, I would imagine in my experience when I went to China, the people were lovely, just lovely, very welcoming. When I go to Japan, people are lovely, despite what the government's doing. I've met many Israelis, lovely people. Many Palestinians, lovely people. Many Arabs, lovely people. And so we can't generalize. And I guess I want to bring it back full circle that this particular shooter in this Catholic school shooting was a trans person. Please resist. Trans people, as I said in another video, are getting a pretty bad rap these days. And please resist the temptation to generalize that, okay, therefore all trans people are murderers, right? They aren't. I know many of them. They are not. Just like every black person is not this, and every yellow person is not this, and every red person is not this. And so it's important that we understand that there's a diversity of the human condition. So I want you to reflect on your lives, and I want you to call forth anything that you're wrestling with now. And I want you to look at the entirety of your lifespan. And this could be up in the guise of grief and loss. I'm going to offer you two models today, and then we'll conclude. The first model comes from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. It's very popularized, and it was made famous in the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s. And it is called The Stages of Death and Dying. And I have lost a number of people. I'm of an age where, of course, both my parents have passed away, and my older sister has passed away, and I've had a number of losses. In fact, I did tell a story. I guess I'll tell you, since I told the group. I wasn't going to, but as the group supervision was going around the room and saying, gee, I had this loss or that loss, I felt the duty to acknowledge that, because I think there sometimes is this expectation that we should get over it, or that I did a video on narcissism, and people who are really narcissistic lack empathy. And so at the one extreme, you had a loss yesterday, and they're going to look at you and roll their eyes and say, well, get over that, get over it, that was yesterday. The other side of the spectrum is someone who is grieving the loss of a loved one for 20, 30, 40 years. Now, this surprised me myself today. So I said, a few years ago I was with my brother, and that he said he could tell that something was up. And I said, what's going on? What's going on with you? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, you seem pretty out of sorts. And I said, I don't know. Last couple of weeks, I've been just really sad. I've been crying. I've been not sleeping. I've been having dreams. And he said, well, do you know what day it is today? And I said, May 17th. He goes, May 17th. I went, oh, our mother died on May 17th, 1984. And our sister died on May 17th, 2004, 20 years later to the day. Oh, I was unaware that I was grieving, or that I was grieving that. Now understand, the most recent death was 21 years ago. And I'm still having stuff. Now, I'm over it. I've gotten to the acceptance phase that I want to talk about in a moment. But understand, and please don't hold yourself hostage, like somehow you should be over it. Grief takes as long as it takes. And there are tools and there is help available, and we have processes and all that sort of thing. But please don't beat yourself up if you're still grieving the loss of something that happened. Now, what I was surprised about is when I started telling the story to the group. These are the people that work for me. And this was my birthday party. I teared up. I got emotional. I couldn't continue. And then the supervisor who was running the meeting, actually, people were pressing her to share her story. And she said, I'm just not ready. And I remember when my sister died, it was 3 years before I could talk about her and her battle with lung cancer publicly. That I just couldn't. I could not, without crying, not without losing my composure. And so I'm not ashamed to lose my composure, but understand this grief comes out of nowhere. So if you get nothing else out of today, please understand it's a process, and it goes through the following stages. So Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. There are 5 stages, and, you can find this well documented in the literature. The first stage is shock and numb. When I worked in the emergency department, I was the person who delivered the bad news. According to the O.J. Simpson trial at the time, I was the one who did it more than anyone else in Los Angeles County because I worked the day shift in a trauma center where I, with the doctor, was telling families about the bad news, meaning their loved one had passed away. And so they called me as an expert witness on that trial. And their point of view is they wanted to know when OJ broke the glass when he heard about Nicole Brown Simpson's death, was that a normal grief reaction? And of course, I said that grief reactions are all over the map, that I can't say whether it was normal or not. And they didn't like that very much. I think they wanted me to say because he broke the glass, it proved he killed her. I wasn't willing to say that. Um, so I have been present at great many people's deaths. And I think see that as a privilege. I have given the bad news to people. I was the voice you didn't want to hear in the middle of the night, trying to get family to come to the emergency department after a car accident or a gang shooting or whatever. And so it is important to understand that however you react is however you react. And so that initial stage is called shock and numb because that's what the body does. That's what the psyche does. And so I've had many people, I will say the words, and we have a thing in our work called cognitive mastery. So I would go something like this. Thank you for coming to the emergency department. Your loved one was involved in a motor vehicle accident at the corner of 3rd and Main in town. They were T-boned by another vehicle, and they had horrible injuries, and they were brought to the emergency department. CPR was initiated in the field, and I'm kind of stretching this out because I know as soon as I drop the bomb, they won't hear anything, but I want to give them as much information as I can. And I'd sit in, and then therefore, then we got them here. We worked on them for a while, and unfortunately, your loved one's passed away. And then I just wait. Now, if you have a family of 5 or 6, um, it's going to be all over the map. Some people are going to just gasp. Some people are going to say no. Some people are going to be stoic and say nothing at all. Some people are going to get violent and angry. Some people are going to have all sorts of different reactions. Kubler-Ross says that this stage is very important for humans to go through. It is the first stage of death and dying. It's the first stage of grief and loss. And when you hear it, you are shocked. You are numb. That's stage number 1. Stage number 2 is denial. Now, you may think that stage number 1, people will go, no, that's not happening. And they do say that. They say, no, this is not happening right now. I can't go through this. I can't deal with this right now. That's actually denial, but that's more shock and numb. Denial, from a psychological point of view, is the next stage whereby they forget that their loved one is no longer here. I did this when my cats died a few years ago, where I had 2 cats and they died within 6 months of each other. They were old. They were 25 years old. They had a good life. And I just forgot some days. And I'd go home and, first, the first one died, the older one died, and then the other one was left, and I would forget, and I'd get home, and one of my rituals when I got home from work was both kitties, right? And I just forgot. I mean, quite literally, I'd get home, the ritual was the cats would come into my lap, we would pet and treats and do the whole thing. And for a while, a month or so, I forgot there weren't 2 cats. And then I had to deal with the second cat who was pretty traumatized by the loss of her sister. It wasn't really her sister, but they grew up together. And I mean, they weren't in the same litter, if you will. So denial is the forgetting, the unwillingness to acknowledge. Now, denial can have a delusional aspect. It can have a psychotic aspect. You may have heard stories of people who, don't change the bedroom, or they don't give away the loved one's clothes, or they set a place at the table, and so on. And so that's a serious part of denial. Now, understand that at any step of these stages, we must move through them to the next stage. Now, they're not necessarily in this order. You can jump around, but in order to get to the place of healing, we got to go through them. You can't go around though. And trust me, I tried to skip it, skip the grief. Too painful. Don't want to do it. Let me just shut down and ignore it. Tried that. So stage three is usually anger. And I know that seems counterintuitive. Someone has died. We have lost someone. We've lost a pet. An irrational, unconscious response is, how could they do this to me? How could God do this to me? How could the perpetrator do this to me? How could the world do this to me? Life is so unfair. This, never mind, this isn't happening, but now I'm pissed. How could my dad die on me? Right? How could my cat die on me after 25 years? Right? And so anger is a very normal, natural feeling in the grief process. It's weird though, because let's say, you've nursed your grandmother through a very terminal illness and with love and light left and was surrounded by loved ones and saw the light and grandma's in a better place and she lived a good long time. Very normal to still get pissed at grandma. How dare you? How dare you leave me? And I'm smiling because it's kind of weird. You're like pissed off at your loved one for dying. You're pissed off. Now, I say it's normal, and so you can handle that however you want to handle that, but that's a pretty normal thing. Stage four is called the bargaining stage. Now, bargaining is this thing where our unconscious mind wants to assert a level of control, a measure of control over what's not controllable. And this is the shoulda, woulda, coulda. We irrationally will believe that if only we would have been there, if only we would have done something, if only we would have said something, if only, then perhaps this person wouldn't have died or wouldn't have shot up the church or wouldn't have, that there's some involvement that we have. Now, consciously, usually we know it's irrational, right? But there is a wringing of the hands of, if only I had been at grandma's bedside, she wouldn't have passed away. And the hospice nurse will say, no, your grandma was 1,000 years old. She was going to die. There was nothing you could do about it. It doesn't help, though, because it's our best attempt to assert control over a situation that is beyond our control. Well, if I would have been there, she would have hung on a little longer. Or if I would have done this, and that's why when we say, make peace with. Now, I can say with great joy that when my mother died, I had talked to her 3 days before she died. It was Mother's Day. She died 3 days after Mother's Day, that I had made peace with her. I didn't know she was going to die. It was a sudden heart attack, but there was nothing left unsaid. I don't feel like I had anything else to say to her. We talked every week, we talked a lot. And so I didn't feel any sort of regret or remorse. I wasn't there. I was in Europe when she passed away in Minnesota, but I didn't have that regret, remorse, like, oh, if only I would have been there, somehow she wouldn't have passed away. And I'm now just kind of realizing that I didn't have that feeling of somehow I should have controlled it or I should have been there. Ironically, in that last conversation at Mother's Day, she said, I wish you'd come home. I'm really missing you. Are you coming home soon? And I wasn't planning on coming home. This was May 17th when she passed. I think I was planning to come home in the summertime, like in June. So I said, yeah, Mom, it'll just be a couple more weeks. How do I know that she's going to pass away 3 days later? I didn't. But I didn't have the guilt. I didn't feel guilty about that. When my sister passed away, the same thing. She died of lung cancer. She had the last few weeks, really. From diagnosis to death, it was about 5 weeks. It went very quickly. Part of that is, I think, just because of the virulent nature of her cancer. And part of it is because I think she accepted it. She never complained. I took her to chemo. I took her to the hospital. She was an avid smoker. We would take the chemotherapy and roll the pole down to the smoking section of the hospital, and she'd have a cigarette, and I'd kind of laugh at her and say, died of lung cancer with a cigarette in your hand. And she says, oh, it's too late. The horses left the barn, Pat. Nothing. If I can quit smoking now, it's not going to matter. And I really enjoy smoking. It's like, who's gonna, and of course my brother and I would joke, like, who's going to take that away from her, And so, but I also didn't have any regret or remorse about not feeling complete, or pono, as we say in Hawaiian, with her. I felt complete with her. And I did with my kiddies as well. I really did. I felt that they'd had a good life. And so I say to you, if you have loved ones, and that's why I'm really careful with the people in my life now that I tell them I love them frequently. and constantly, and I try to stay connected and all that sort of thing. So stage 4 is bargaining, and that one can go on for a while. And so this is the feeling guilty, feeling like you should have done something. And then finally, after we do that, we get to this stage of acceptance, where now hear me loud and clear. When I say acceptance, it's not forgetting, it's not pretending. It is that we know they're no longer here. We no longer, and you can make up whatever you want about it. I mean, I'm the one that talks about the other side. I'm the one that talks about, spiritual matters. I do believe they're in a better place. I have been there. It's lovely. I can't wait to go back. I will wait. Don't worry. I'm not going back soon. But, oh yeah, the other side's lovely. I did hear my sister in my ear when I was in Ohio teaching when she passed away, and I heard her in my ear. I was teaching at a hospital, and in her Minnesota accent, I swear to you, and you're going to hear videos where I say, "Look, I don't need you to believe anything. I'm going to share with you my experience." I'm going to quote The Matrix, where Morpheus says to Neo, "Fortunately, my beliefs don't require you to believe me." So I'm going to share stuff, and you can go, "Well, that sounds pretty crazy." Yeah. So I knew when my sister passed away, because we knew that she was going to pass away, she and I had a pact that she would come to me and she would let me know that she's okay. And the day she died, I was teaching class, and it happened while I was teaching. I was teaching a 3-day class for managers in the hospital, and teaching nurse managers and physician leaders, I think. And it happened during the day. So she wasn't doing well. I talked to the doctor at lunch, and he said she may not make it for very long. I said, "Well, just keep in touch with me. I got to teach another segment." So I would, finish the call, and then I would check my phone at the next break after 90 minutes. "You better call me." I would call him and say, "She doesn't look like she's going to survive the night. You should probably come here." And so I did. I told the group I had a co-trainer, and I said that you're in good hands. I'm gonna go. And I didn't get overly disclosing because I didn't want to lose my composure with this professional group. I just said I have a family emergency and I will not be here tomorrow, but you're in good hands with Ursula, and I won't be here tomorrow. And as I was driving the distance to the airport that night, I could hear her in my mind's eye, and I heard her in her Minnesota accent, "Oh, Pat, it's real nice over here. It's just, if I'd have known it was this nice, I wouldn't have been scared. Oh, it's so nice." Of course, I found out later she died, a few moments at that time, and that happens, where people. So that's my experience, and I was reassured. I cried like a baby, of course, the whole hour-long drive to the airport, but it was her keeping her agreement that she would come to me and let me know that she was okay, and she was. And she only came to me a couple times. Now I'm hearing from dead relatives of yours when I do readings that they don't hang around because they don't want to perpetuate the grief process. They don't want, they will make peace. They'll let you know. They'll come to your dreams. They'll give you signs that they're okay, and then they're going to move on. And they do that intentionally. And so my mother has only come back to me half a dozen times since 1984. One was when one of the cats died. She woke me up actually out of a sound sleep and said, in her accent, it was her voice, "Honey, you better go find your cat. You better grab a towel." I don't know why the towel, but I went dutifully. I always did what my mother said. And I went to the linen closet and I got a towel, and I found Chloe, who had gone outside. They were capable of going outside, and I found her under a bush. And when cats die, they like to go away and they go into nature and on the grass. And, I picked her up and I wrapped her in the towel. And it was about 7 o'clock in the morning, and she was still alive. She was faint, but she was still alive. Very skinny, poor thing, and 25 years old. And I held her, and she passed away in my arms. And my mother was right there with me, and I could feel my mother's presence. Like I said, I don't need you to believe it. Okay, so when you get to this fifth stage, does not mean necessarily you're done forever and all time, but it does mean that you've worked through those stages and you've got to the place where you accept that they're gone, you've made peace with that, and you are not bothered on a daily basis with a lot of symptoms, right? It doesn't mean you still don't think about them. It doesn't mean that you still don't talk about them. It doesn't mean that you don't cry from now and again. But the paralyzing part of the grief has finished. Now, in Judaism, they have a ritual called Shiva, Shiva, and it's a 10-day process, which I really admire. I think it's a wonderful ritual where when a loved one passes away, you take 10 days off and you sit Shiva, which means you pray and you are in reflective mode and you don't work. And it's a time for grieving. It's a time for, and then when that period of time is over, you go back to your life. You still may be sad, you still may be grieving, but it is a very, I was going to say protracted, very specific ritual around death and dying that I really admire, by the way. Okay, so that's one of our two models that I'm going to share with you. Those are Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, Stages of Death and Dying. The other one you've heard me talk about, and this is more for you in terms of you managing your own death and dying and managing your own health. Deepak Chopra coined these, and there are four stages, and he calls them actually the stages of death. Number one, when you are, this is up against burnout, when you are burning the candle at both ends, the first sign you are doing too much and you're not taking care of yourself is fatigue. And I'm not talking about missing a night's sleep. I'm talking about years and decades of overworking. And now we have cultures, in Japan, I forget the Japanese term. I'm sure I have Japanese students out there that will correct me, but there is a term for death with overwork. That literally salarymen will just die at their desks, working too much, working. There are a lot of factory workers now that are, and I don't know if they have a concomitant word in Chinese and Mandarin, but apparently there are factory workers that'll just work these shifts and just work, and then just die of overwork. The first sign that you are working too much or not taking care of yourself over the long haul is fatigue. And I'm not talking about, like I said, missing a night's sleep. I'm talking about just bone-weary fatigue. Second stage is illness. No, sorry. Second stage is accidents. You will become clumsy. You will start dropping things. You will start having stubbing your toe. You'll start stumbling downstairs. You may have car accidents that are your fault. You may have car accidents that are not your fault. You may not make good judgments around certain things. You may try to cut corners. And Deepak Chopra, and this surprised me actually, said that you may notice that you're just more accident prone. I did when I was on my journey to cancer. Stage 3 is illness, and he divides this stage 3 into two categories. One is just immune suppression, meaning you catch every cold. You're noticing that you're really resilient to colds and flu and COVID and whatever it is that's out there, and then all of a sudden you're just catching everything. And you're catching stuff from your kids, and you're catching stuff from where you're going out in public. And I'm not talking about just COVID. I'm just talking about every cold, every flu, every bug. And you're starting to miss days from work because your immune system seems to be suppressed. And then the second half of the disease process is things like cancer, where given enough time of immune suppression, your body will start mobilizing defenses and start growing things like tumors and cancer and that sort of thing. And again, metaphysically would say that your body is trying to get your attention, that maybe you should slow down, or maybe I should slow down, is what my learning was in that. And then finally, left unchecked, you could die. You just die. And that's the fourth stage of death, is death. And he says, and he doesn't say it tongue in cheek, he says, look, we all have an accountability. We all have a responsibility to ourselves, to take care of ourselves. And the question comes up, well, isn't that self-indulgent? Or, oh, I don't want to be so selfish. Or I'm leading a life of service and I want to be of service to my children and service to my partner and service to my job and service to my church and on and on and on. And that's all great until you die. And then when you die, we all lose. And so I'm now, since cancer, and I'm cancer-free now for a couple of years, part of and I keep pointing to the group room over there, my lecture to them is don't follow my example. Take care of yourself. You will get no pushback from me. I have never turned down a vacation request. I have never turned down a day off request. I have never turned down a mental health day request, and I never will. And if I have to work for you, I will cover your patients while you take some time off if you're circling the drain. I shouldn't put this in public. I shouldn't say it, but I mean it. I would rather you take some time off and not die or not get sick or not get cancer or not, because frankly, and I had to learn that one the hard way because I ignored all the warning signals. I was tired for years. Was accident prone for years, culminating in that bad ski accident in 2015, and then in 2017 diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And so my body, my life, my universe was trying to get my attention to say, dude, really, can you slow it down a little bit? And I am much better, I think. Not working as much. I don't work as many hours. I don't take as many patients. I don't see as many people. I, try to be measured about my approach to life, and it's much better. And again, we all have our motivations. We want to make more money, or we want to do this or do that, or have this or have that. And if you don't have your health, and this sounds so cliche, and it's easy for me to say no on this end of it. If you don't have your health, it's life is not so great. So those are the two models that I wanted to talk about today. And I urge you, as a result of watching this video, to just do a quick self-evaluation. What's going well, what's working, what are you proud of, and that kind of thing. And then look at what's most challenging for you right now. What's getting in your way, and if you are sliding down that slope of overwork, you're very fatigued all the time. And again, I am a Eastern doctor, Eastern practitioner, and in a Western world. In fact, I was just communicating with my primary care physician today about changing an appointment. I do both. I do Western medicine. I do Eastern medicine. I use it all. Why not? We have the tools. And so I'm due for my annual physical, and I'm going to try to keep that appointment no matter how busy I am. So with that, I wish you all the best. Thank you so much for joining us for another YouTube Live. And we will see you next week. You will not see me. In fact, you're not going to see me for a while. Let's just look real quickly. Next week, I am in Huntington Beach at a conference. The following week, we will be on Friday, the 12th of September, and then not again until in October because I'll be teaching in Hawaii. And I know you all feel sorry for me that I have to go to Hawaii again. And I have to teach, and I accept your sympathy wholeheartedly, and I appreciate all of you. So thanks very much. Have a great weekend.